Right. So I wanted to just answer the question about why we might use letters to support phonological awareness. Because we've heard phonological awareness is something you can do in the dark. And so the goal is to do it without any scaffolding, without anything to give a visual cue as to what the manipulation would result in. So in answer to a question, someone says, well, what do I do if the kid can't do this? And I say, well, scaffold with letters. And it's like, well, that's not really phonological awareness. It is a scaffolding to get there. So the goal being to be able to do it just auditorily, but as a scaffold, we can use whatever means it takes to get a student to phonological awareness. So let me just show you one of the things that we might work on. So, oh, not that. Here we go. So if we are wanting our very beginning students to be able to manipulate sounds, we can scaffold it with actual letters if they're learning letters. So Reading Simplified does an excellent job with this, and some of the other programs are doing this, where they use the letters, they teach the letters and incorporate phonological processing at the same time. Now, is it true phonological awareness? Well, you're not doing it in the dark. This is scaffolding, but it can be a step along the way. So Stanislaus Dehaene, and I know I never say his name quite right, Dane, anyway, he in his book about reading in the brain, and in a recent article, which I didn't pull up to quote, but he says that actually phonological awareness improves with using letters, that it gives the brain something to anchor to. And so we might say, let's build the word pat, and I can have a student come and build the word. Let's listen to the sounds. Pat, and I hear the p. And I chose that one because his name was Peter, or whatever it might be. Pat, and maybe I only have two choices here, or maybe this is the only vowel we might have. So we can scaffold, we can do whatever we need to, just give only two choices if that's what we want. At, and do this. And we want to change pat to sat. And so Switch It does this in Reading Simplified, and it's using the letters. Okay, so sat. And so we can say right now we have pat, and I want to make sat. And let's see, do I need this anymore? No. So what's the sound I need instead? And so the students can do this. Okay, so we can start out with very, very limited letters and sounds and use it to reinforce the letter sound relationship and do some manipulation. Now, this is not in the dark. This is the highest level of scaffolding, but it can help us get there. So I love that Dane mentions that he can show with his brain studies that using the letters actually promotes improved phonological awareness, which is great. And it makes so much sense to me because, for instance, if I were to listen to a Thai language or the Vietnamese language, I'm sitting there saying, I have no idea what that sound was. What was that sound? Say it again. Say it again. But when someone says, this letter represents this sound, then I'm more in tune to listen to it. So it gives me something to hang on to. I might not remember it, but it gives me an anchor. And so that makes sense to me because I know that when I listen to something in Thai, I'm like, I have no idea what those sounds were. No idea, right? So anything that helps anchor the sound to something can help promote improved phonological awareness. Now, like I might use this for a very, very beginning, or I might have more letters and work with it the way Reading Simplified does by giving a new target word and asking what the change is, or the way that in Kilpatrick's book what he does is he gives a new target word. So he might say, we're starting out with rasp. And he'll say, if I took away this, what's left? And just having the visual here gives me a clue to say, okay, oh, I can imagine what's left because I can imagine this without this and say, wrap. Okay, good. So we can do it where we change the target word or we change the sound. And this is a very high level of scaffolding to get us to phonological awareness. And then of course we can use, you know, Elkonin boxes and do the same thing. And I have an example here with a ice cream truck because some of my students, just adding the terminology, the first sound, the second sound, the third sound, that messes them up. So everyone knows who's standing in line at the ice cream truck, which one is first. So that directionality of reading, it's abstract. I mean, why are we left to right? Well, we just are. But so giving that and giving, you know, if we ask what's the first sound or which sound changed the first sound or the second sound, an ice cream truck often helps because everyone knows if you're standing right next to the ice cream truck, you're first, and the next guy after you, he's next or second, and we can have a bunch of them and we know who's the last one, right? So that terminology is much more concrete. But in any case, we can use Elkonin boxes, we can use color tiles to represent the sounds. My preference, once I go from letters, is I'm finding that I actually prefer using my hands to scaffold because kids always have their hands with them. And so it's really nice. If I say the word was clam, what are the sounds you hear? And we can put it on our hand. And I can say, what was the sound? What was the sound? What was this? What was this? Okay, so if I take away the k, wait, which one was it? If I take away the k, what's left? This one? Okay, what's left? And they have that visual representation. So for kids, you know, they're looking at their hands, they can do this. It gives them that scaffolding. And I find it helps with, you know, segmenting for encoding, that they can say the word and to themselves. And I see my students whom I've taught, they'll do this as they're thinking of the sounds, and I see them trying to enumerate the sounds and give themselves this little bit of a reminder as they go, right? So a lot of people, we do tapping, we do all sorts of things, but something that they can have with them that they never lose, you know, like Elkonin boxes or little tokens, it helps with the manipulation. So the big question is, if using the letters improves phonological awareness, why do we take the letters away? What's the goal of that? I mean, his work shows, I mean, he does these crazy fMRIs and all these wonderful things to show that it improves phonological awareness. Why do we do it without letters? Well, we know that some kids develop perfect phonological awareness without any intervention. That's that percent, that's that child, right? We know some kids, you give them any kind of instruction, they're getting it, you know, so we have those. We can't tell by looking at the class which ones need the most help. So you might as well provide it to everybody. Let's not leave anyone behind. Let's give it to everybody. And it does help everybody providing that explicit instruction. But why do we take away the letters then? If having the letters improves phonological awareness, why do we take away the letters? So, I mean, that's a valid question. It's like, okay, we see it improves. He shows us it improves. Why do we do it without the letters? And it hit me really clearly in one of Dr. Kilpatrick's talks. And I don't think I saw this quote in his book, but in one of his talks, he says, oh, they can tell that the visual processing part of the brain happens just this teeny tiny bit faster than the auditory processing part. And it's like, oh, boom, that's why we have to do it. So for instance, and I have if I were to have my cup of water and I put two straws in it, one in and one out, and I suck on it, what am I going to get? what am I going to get? And some of you know, and you can try this with your kids or whatever, you know that if I were to suck on this, I get almost no water at all. I am mostly sucking in air. Why? It is least resistance. Oops, I just dropped my straw. That's the path of least resistance. If I had a pastry bag and I had a huge aperture on one side and a teeny tiny aperture on the other side, and I squeezed it, we know that most of the pastry, the frosting would come out of the side with the large aperture. Material naturally flows to the point of least resistance. So if our brain, this is my theory, but it's made sense to me why we need to do this. If our brain works that little bit faster on the visual end, how can we target the auditory end, which seems to be where most of our children have issues? Just that purely phonological area. We have to eventually get to take away the easy part and just make them work with the hard part. And it's like, I have a really bad left knee, and my daughter or my doctors, they said, well, if you exercise and improve the muscles around your knee, you would support the knee and it would work better. It's like, okay, so I go to the gym and I'm sitting there on the machine doing quads, and it's like, okay, I can do this, but I have my right knee supporting my left knee. And my daughter, who is a trainer, she says, Mom, you have to do the exercise with just your left leg. Otherwise, my right leg is supporting my weak left leg too much, and I'm not exercising the weak leg. So this is the same thing that happens to our students. Our students have a weaker, or many of them, a weaker phonological processing part. That's the part that's harder for them. So if we always support it with the visual, we're not making them strengthen the part that's weak. Okay. The brain's always going to go to the path of least resistance, which would be the visual for those students, and which would be the right knee for mine, right? So I'm sitting there doing my exercises thinking, okay, this is easy, I can do it. And then it's like, oh, try to do the same things with just my left leg. I'm going down from 40 pounds to like 5 pounds is hard. And because that's the weak part, I have to target that explicitly. So taking phonological manipulation to eventually remove all scaffolding to get it to just the sound is forcing us to exercise the part that is weaker. So does everyone need it? Probably not, but it doesn't hurt. And we can see in Kilpatrick's work that it really helps those who are struggling. So that's my take on using letters to support phonological awareness and using it as much as you need to, but eventually getting to where it is just the auditory, so we can target the weak processing. Okay, I hope that's a reasonable explanation.